The sun struck the steel deck as Morgan reported for her first official training cycle aboard the carrier. Salt air mixed with jet fuel. Boots hit non-skid in sharp cadence. She was new, unproven, just another surname stitched above a regulation pocket. They noticed. 6 Navy SEALs waited near the flight line, relaxed but watchful. Jeffrey stood at the center, composed, studying her like an inspection target. First day, young lady. Low laughter followed, comments clean, deliberate, cutting. Morgan kept moving, chin steady, breath controlled. Her fingers trembled once before locking into a fist. She swallowed the burn behind her eyes. No reaction. They closed in. Then she saw it. On Jeffrey's forearm, a serpent coiled around a sinking hull. My mother has that same mark. Laughter broke louder. Jeffrey didn't laugh. His gaze dropped to her name tape. Collins. The amusement drained from his face. Years earlier, Janet Collins had almost ended him on this mission. Now her daughter stood in front of him. If this is how it began, imagine what happens when the past refuses to stay buried. Stay with this story. The next move won't be loud, but it will change the battlefield between them.
The Atlantic wind moved across the flight deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford with a steady, metallic edge, carrying the scent of jet fuel, salt, and heated non-skid. Petty Officer Second Class Morgan Collins stood just off the island superstructure. Boots squared on the painted boundary line, tablet braced against her forearm. Her cranial hung from a hook beside her station. She was not part of flight ops. Her battlefield was signal flow. Encrypted traffic diagnostics streamed across her display in layered Payne's latency baselines. Packet integrity checks, routing confirmations inside segmented enclaves. She tracked them with disciplined stillness, thumb anchored near the edge of the casing, eyes moving in precise increments. Her warfare device was information warfare, silver against navy fabric. The insignia did not demand attention. It represented jurisdiction over the spectrum defensive networks that never made noise when they were healthy. 2 days earlier, the embarked Naval Special Warfare Detachment had come aboard for maritime security integration drills. Their transfer had been executed without spectacle, manifest verified, equipment serialized, liaison documentation processed through the appropriate chain. They moved now along the deck in contained formations, posture erect, eyes scanning without appearing to search. No wasted gestures. Their presence shifted the air around them, not through volume, but through compression. At their center walked Master Chief Special Warfare Operator Jeffrey Blackwood. His designation as Naval Special Warfare Liaison and Security Integration Lead granted him structured access to specific compartments and planning spaces. It did not place him in the carrier's operational command. The distinction existed in paperwork and protocol, even if the deck crew felt the gravitational pull of his rank. He approached Morgan's station without breaking stride. His team adjusted subtly, forming a perimeter that was not defensive, not aggressive, simply territorial. Morgan did not look up. She completed a checksum verification, logged a timestamp, then shifted to a secondary frequency audit. "You're monitoring internal encryption bleed?" Blackwood asked. His voice carried the controlled projection of someone accustomed to issuing corrections in confined spaces. "Yes, Master Chief," she replied, tone level, eyes still on the scrolling diagnostics. A fractional pause settled between them. Blackwood's gaze lowered to her name tape. Collins. The muscle along his jaw tightened once, then released. He folded his arms across his chest. The motion drew back his sleeve just enough to expose the ink along his forearm. A faded, tattoo-weathered lines of a sinking ship coiled by a serpent. Morgan's breath shortened, barely perceptible. Her fingers hovered above the tablet's surface without making contact. A micro-hesitation, less than a second. "My mother bore that exact mark," she said. The words left her evenly, but the tendon at her throat flexed once as she swallowed. No one laughed. One operator shifted his weight from heel to toe, the non-skid rasping under his boot. Another's eyes flicked from the tattoo to Morgan's face and back again. The wind filled the silence where conversation might have stood. Blackwood did not look at the ink. He looked at her. For a measured beat, his expression remained operationally neutral. Then, something recalibrated behind his eyes, recognition registering without invitation. His shoulders remained squared. His breathing did not change. The deck crew continued their evolutions in the background, yellow shirts signaling. A distant turbine spooling, ordnance carts secured to tie down chains. The carrier moved through open water, stable and indifferent. Morgan resumed motion first. She finalized her log entry and locked the screen. Her posture never broke alignment with regulation bearing. If her pulse had accelerated, it did not reach her hands. Blackwood's arms lowered slowly to his sides. The fabric of his sleeve fell back into place, concealing the serpent and the ship. Neither of them filled the space with explanation. The wind carried salt between them, and the carrier pressed forward on its assigned heading. Blackwood inclined his head once. The movement was economical, almost imperceptible, but the effect was immediate. The operators behind him disengaged without verbal acknowledgement. Boots shifted against non-skid. One adjusted the sling of his rifle by a fraction. Another gave a brief glance toward the island before turning away. They dispersed across the flight deck with the same controlled cadence they had arrived with. No theatrics. No visible reaction. Wind pressed against fabric and skin. A jet engine spooled somewhere aft, a low turbine whine building toward launch power. Morgan remained squared to her station, tablet secured under her forearm, knuckles resting lightly along its edge. "Who is your mother, petty officer?" Blackwood asked. His tone did not rise. It did not soften. Morgan lifted her eyes from the dormant screen and met his gaze fully for the first time. Her expression remained within regulation bearing, but a small muscle beneath her left eye tightened once before settling. Janet Collins. The name altered the space between them. Blackwood's jaw set, not abruptly, but with measured pressure. His lips pressed together for a controlled second before releasing. The wind caught the edge of his sleeve. He did not adjust it. 20 years earlier, during a compartmentalized mission later sealed under restricted classification protocols, Intelligence Officer Janet Collins had submitted a formal after-action report concerning Operation Nightfall. The document had moved through internal review channels without public notation. It bore no inflammatory language, no explicit allegation. Its phrasing had been clinical. It recorded a delayed breach timeline inconsistent with the operational clock. It identified a compromised insertion point that had not been reflected in the initial pre-mission intelligence summary. It noted offshore financial irregularities that appeared months after redeployment transactions routed through layered entities, beyond standard compensation structures. Janet Collins had not accused Master Chief Blackwood of misconduct. She had not recommended court-martial. She had not assigned motive. She had documented anomalies. Blackwood's eyes did not leave Morgan's face. The skin at his temple shifted slightly as he clenched his molars once, then released. His breathing remained steady, chest rising in slow, disciplined intervals. If the name had triggered recollection, he did not verbalize it. Morgan felt her pulse along the base of her throat, steady but pronounced. She did not fold her arms. She did not retreat. Her shoulders remained level, posture aligned to instruction drilled through years of service. The Atlantic wind lifted loose strands of hair near her collar before settling them again. The flight deck continued in motion around them. Yellow shirts signaled clearance arcs. A tow tractor reversed with a measured beep. The carrier held course, cutting through gray water without deviation. The report Janet Collins had filed had never surfaced in public inquiry. It had not appeared in redacted briefings or investigative summaries circulated beyond restricted compartments. It had not altered Blackwood's career trajectory in any visible manner, but it had not been erased. Documents placed under restricted classification do not vanish. They are archived, indexed, sealed within systems that remember without speaking. Blackwood shifted his weight by a fraction, boots grinding softly against textured deck coating. His hands hung at his sides now, fingers relaxed but not open. The serpent and sinking ship remained concealed beneath fabric. Morgan did not elaborate. She did not explain lineage or intent. She allowed the name to stand on its own record. For a long moment, neither of them filled the silence. The distance between them was measured in feet, but the history attached to it stretched across 2 decades of classified paper trails and unclosed review. Blackwood's gaze hardened, not in anger, not in threat, but in calculation. Then the expression flattened back into professional neutrality. "Understood," he said. The word carried no inflection. Morgan inclined her head once in acknowledgement. No further exchange occurred. Above them, the carrier's island cast a long shadow across the deck as the sun angled westward. Metal cooled by degrees. Equipment hummed within operational tolerances. Operation Nightfall had never become a headline. It had remained contained within folders marked by clearance levels and distribution limitations. Now the name tied to that file stood on the flight deck in Navy working uniform, steady and unflinching. Morgan did not wander into restricted compartments on Curiosity. She reported to the Cyber Defense Watch floor under formal assignment orders. Cryptologic Technician Network Second Class, cleared and credentialed under the Information Warfare Commander's authority. Her access was logged, audited, and time-stamped like every other privileged action inside the Enclave. 3 nights into the joint exercise cycle, the watch floor lighting remained dimmed to operational standard. Blue-white monitor glow reflected across rows of workstations. Environmental systems hummed at a constant decibel level, filtered air cool against exposed skin. Morgan sat upright, headset resting loosely around her neck, fingers moving across her keyboard in deliberate sequences. Encrypted traffic flowed through segmented dashboards, throughput metrics, packet inspection summaries, authentication validations. Nothing flagged red. Nothing breached threshold alerts. The anomaly appeared as a deviation too small for automated triggers. A micro-latency spike across a secondary secure frequency band milliseconds beyond established baseline variance. It did not repeat immediately. It did not cascade. Morgan leaned closer to her display. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she replayed the data capture window. She isolated the band, filtered out routine exercise injects, and overlaid timing markers. Another spike. Not external penetration. There were no signature patterns consistent with adversarial intrusion. Firewall integrity remained intact. No authentication failures, no brute force attempts. Internal bleed. A ghost overlay riding inside authorized exercise traffic. Synchronized just enough to avoid detection by threshold-based monitoring protocols. She exhaled slowly through her nose and initiated a deeper packet trace. Her right index finger hovered over the enter key for a fraction of a second before committing the command. The system populated compressed data strings embedded within legitimate maneuver coordination traffic, sophisticated, not noisy, designed to live beneath scrutiny. Morgan documented the anomaly without commentary. She captured logs, preserved the original timestamps, and generated a hash verification to ensure evidentiary integrity. No speculative notes, no personal observations. She stood, smoothed her uniform blouse once at the waist, and carried her findings to her division chief. The office lighting was brighter there, fluorescent and clinical. She placed the printed extracts on the desk with steady hands. "Sir, I recommend review of these timing irregularities," she said evenly. Her division chief scanned the documents, eyes moving line by line. His jaw shifted once as he leaned back. No immediate reaction. He nodded and instructed preservation of all related logs pending further analysis. No accusations were voiced. Over the next 72 hours, Morgan maintained routine watch rotations. She did not alter her posture on the deck. She did not seek eye contact with the embarked detachment. She monitored. The pattern returned. Each occurrence aligned with planning windows designated to the Naval Special Warfare Detachment. Timestamps matched the periods when secure spaces were reserved for their operational briefs. The spikes were brief, precise injections of latency that resolved before most systems would register deviation. Morgan cross-referenced internal access logs. Auxiliary communications control entries populated on her screen clearance codes. Time in, time out. Master Chief Jeffrey Blackwood. His access fell within liaison privileges authorized for the exercise. No violation of compartment's entry protocols, no force credentials, no override flags. She watched the cursor blink at the end of the line containing his name. Her jaw tightened, then relaxed. The access was lawful. The frequency anomalies were subtle. The overlap between them existed. Morgan documented the correlation without embellishment. She appended timestamps, preserved audit trails, and routed the compiled file through proper supervisory channels. Her pulse remained steady against the inside of her wrist as she closed the report. Nothing about the entries constituted proof of misconduct, but the pattern did not disappear. Morgan did not reach for her phone. She did not draft a personal message. She did not invoke her mother's name beyond the confines of operational relevance. The impulse to connect past to present pressed briefly against her ribs, then settled under discipline. Personal lineage had no standing in evidentiary procedure. Instead, she submitted a formal request for a closed-door briefing through her immediate supervisory chain. The routing followed established Protocol Division Chief acknowledgement, then elevation to Department Head review. The meeting was scheduled without annotation beyond cyber anomaly assessment. The compartment designated for the briefing was windowless, sound-dampened, secured by cipher lock. Fluorescent lights cast an even wash across the conference table. Her department head, an 04, sat at the head position, service khakis pressed into sharp lines. To his right, the Information Warfare Commander, O-5, hands folded loosely over a legal pad, expression unreadable. Morgan stood until instructed to sit. "Proceed," the O-4 said. She connected her secured tablet to the isolated display terminal. Encrypted logs populated the screen timestamps, packet traces, access audit trails. Her voice remained level as she outlined the micro-latency spikes across the secondary secure frequency band. The ghost overlay masked with unauthorized exercise traffic. The recurrence pattern aligned with specific planning windows. She did not gesture unnecessarily. When her finger indicated a data column, it did so once, then withdrew. The O-5 leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing at the correlation overlay. His jaw flexed once as he reviewed the access entries from Auxiliary Communications Control. The name on the log did not elicit visible surprise. It registered, then settled into calculation. "Are you alleging compromise?" the O-4 asked. "No, sir," Morgan replied. "I am documenting pattern correlation and recommending further review." Silence followed. The hum of ventilation filled the pause. The O-5 tapped the edge of the legal pad twice with his pen, then stopped. "Preserve all original logs," he said. "No deviation from routine operations." "Yes, Captain." The review extended beyond the meeting. For the next 48 hours, the department head and Information Warfare Commander conducted independent verification of the dataset. Hash values were cross-checked. Time synchronization logs were validated against shipboard network clocks. No procedural shortcuts were taken. Only after the correlation withstanded internal scrutiny did the O-5 initiate contact with Naval Criminal Investigative Service through secure fleet channels. The transmission was encrypted, compartmentalized, and marked for restricted distribution. No deck announcement accompanied it. No rumors circulated through passageways. Within that communication, archived reference was made to Operation Nightfall. Janet Collins' original report was retrieved from archival storage under proper authority. The document, preserved under restricted classification, was reintroduced into analytical review. Its language remained clinical timestamp discrepancies, compromised insertion documentation, offshore financial irregularities identified months after mission completion. The financial anomalies noted 2 decades earlier had not been adjudicated. They had not been disproven. They remained unresolved entries in a system that records without emotion. The O4's expression hardened slightly as he scanned the archived summary. The O4's lips pressed into a thin line before relaxing. The case had never been formally closed. No exoneration order, no final disposition memorandum. It had remained dormant within controlled files, awaiting substantiation or dismissal. Morgan was not present when the archival document was displayed in full. She remained at her assigned station, posture unchanged, monitoring routine network traffic as if the previous nights had contained nothing beyond standard duty. Her hands moved steadily across the keyboard. Her breathing maintained even cadence. Above deck, flight operations continued within tolerance. Below deck, documentation moved through channels designed precisely for moments such as this: quiet, procedural, irreversible once initiated. The system had been engaged. Naval Criminal Investigative Service did not arrive with visible disruption. No marked vehicles, no raised voices on the flight deck. Their embarkation orders were processed under Exercise Evaluation Authority, folded into the administrative flow of Joint Integration Oversight. Credentials were verified at the quarterdeck. Salutes were exchanged without emphasis. The Carrier Strike Group commanders signed the legal authorization before any technical monitoring commenced. The documentation specified scope, duration, and evidentiary handling procedures. Collection parameters were narrow, compliant with Uniform Code of Military Justice Standards and Department of the Navy investigative policy. There would be no fishing expeditions, only substantiated review. Morgan received her instructions in a compartment with the door secured and blinds drawn. The Information Warfare Commander delivered them without ornament. You will maintain routine operations. No deviation in posture, no independent action. Yes, sir. She did not ask who from NCIS had embarked. She did not request status updates. Her role remained defined: monitor, document, preserve. On the watch floor, nothing changed outwardly. Diagnostic panels glowed. Network traffic flowed across segmented displays. Morgan's expression remained neutral as she tracked throughput baselines. If anticipation pressed against her sternum, it did not reach her fingertips. A transmitter sweep of naval special warfare equipment was conducted under authorized inspection protocols. The process was methodical, non-intrusive, documented, witnessed. Portable spectrum analyzers moved across serialized gear. Cases were opened, contents inventoried, resealed. Nothing anomalous surfaced. Signal noise remained within expected tolerances. Blackwood observed portions of the inspection from a measured distance. His hands rested behind his back, posture erect. When approached for clarification on equipment configuration, he answered in concise terms. His voice did not rise. His eyes did not wander. The initial sweep concluded without findings. Morgan reviewed the transmitted spectrum logs later that night. Her chair creaked softly as she leaned closer to the monitor. She isolated faint signal deviations that did not register as active transmissions during the physical sweep. Intermittent. Subthreshold. She initiated deeper scan analysis within authorized parameters, correlating the deviations against stored traffic captures. A narrow-band compression signature appeared brief, precise, camouflaged within legitimate exercise maneuver data. Her jaw tightened as she expanded the packet's structure. The embedded code was not broad spectrum. It was engineered to ride within approved traffic envelopes, indistinguishable to surface-level inspection. Further cross-referencing aligned the anomaly with hardware identifiers logged during the earlier inspection, a modified signal repeater housed inside. Blackwood's authorized liaison kit registered slight configuration variants, subtle enough to evade routine diagnostics. NCII's technicians, operating under the signed authorization, conducted a secondary controlled examination. The repeater casing was opened in a secured compartment, photographed, cataloged. Within its housing, a microtransmission device was discovered, integrated seamlessly into the circuitry, shielded to prevent passive detection. The device transmitted compressed maneuver projections, timing windows, vector adjustments, deck evolution sequencing. Individually, the data fragments appeared benign. No weapons codes, no classified strike packages, nothing that would trigger immediate alarm. Morgan studied the reconstructed data stream on her display. Her breathing slowed, measured through her nose. Her fingers rested lightly on the keyboard, unmoving. Aggregated over time, the transmissions formed a pattern of operational predictability: launch timing, recovery cycles, adjustment intervals, priceless in aggregate. Blackwood was not confronted. The investigation remained controlled, compartmentalized. He continued attending planning sessions under liaison authority, unaware of the specific technical discovery now logged under evidentiary control. Morgan maintained her watch posture. She executed her duties without alteration, eyes scanning metrics with disciplined precision. No outward shift betrayed the knowledge forming beneath layers of protocol and documentation. The carrier moved steadily through Atlantic waters, steel hull indifferent to the quiet recalibration unfolding within its compartments. The live ordnance drill began under clear procedural authority. Deck markings were rechecked, safety observers positioned at prescribed intervals, firefighting equipment staged within immediate reach. The Atlantic wind pushed exhaust and salt across the flight deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford, flattening jerseys against torsos and tugging at cranial straps. Master Chief Jeffrey Blackwood stood just outside the primary evolution lane, arms folded behind his back, stance balanced. He did not insert himself into the formation. He watched. Yellow shirts directed movement with precise hand signals. Red shirts handled inert training ordnance under controlled supervision. Checklists were called out in steady cadence: step, verification, cross-check, acknowledgement. Each item received verbal confirmation before proceeding. Morgan observed from the island station, headset fitted, gaze steady on both the physical deck below and the diagnostic interface open on her secured terminal. The NCIS monitoring software installed the night prior ran in a minimized window, authorized and documented. A small audio waveform pulsed in real time, capturing ambient exchange within its calibrated range. Blackwood moved only after a checklist pause, an expected break between procedural confirmations. He stepped toward a junior ordnance team member positioned near a secured load cart. His approach was unhurried, posture composed. He leaned in slightly, enough to speak without raising his voice. Morgan adjusted the audio gain by a fraction. The waveform sharpened. "Shift the secondary verification after the load alignment," Blackwood said quietly. "You'll save time. It's redundant at this stage." The junior sailor's gloved hand hovered above the checklist board. His eyes flicked once toward the supervising petty officer several yards away, then back to Blackwood. A bead of sweat traced from beneath his cranial strap down the side of his temple. "Master Chief, the protocol," the sailor began. "I've run these evolutions in combat theaters," Blackwood replied, tone controlled, almost instructional. "Alignment first, verification after." His jaw tightened briefly as he finished the sentence. The muscles along his forearm flexed beneath his sleeve. Morgan's fingers pressed lightly against the console edge. She did not speak. She did not move from her station. The audio stream continued to record, time-stamped and encrypted. The suggested alteration appeared minor, a sequence adjustment, a compression of redundant verification steps. On paper, it shaved seconds. Under NAVSEA safety doctrine, however, checklist sequence integrity was not cosmetic. It was structural. Verification steps existed in prescribed order to prevent cumulative ARIM misalignment, improper locking, inadvertent release under vibration load, minor deviation, major consequence potential. The junior sailor's throat shifted as he swallowed. His hand lowered slightly but did not mark the checklist. His gaze lifted again toward the supervising petty officer, who remained engaged in a parallel confirmation cycle. Morgan watched the interaction through magnified deck cameras. Her breathing remained measured, but the tendon along her wrist stood out as her pulse pressed against the skin. Blackwood straightened. He gave a small nod as if concluding a mentorship moment and stepped back into observational distance. The junior sailor resumed the checklist from its original position. No explosion, no dropped ordnance, no visible breach of safety perimeter. The evolution completed with intolerance. On Morgan's screen, the audio file auto-saved into secured storage. Metadata appended automatically: date, time, GPS coordinate, user authentication credentials. The transmission logs collected over previous nights remained cross-referenced within the same evidentiary folder. The device trace from the modified signal repeater was cataloged under Controlled Chain of Custody protocol. Financial records tied to offshore accounts had already been linked through archival review. Morgan exhaled slowly, barely perceptible. Below, Blackwood resumed his watch posture, hands clasped behind his back. His expression revealed nothing. Within secure compartments elsewhere aboard the carrier, NCIS personnel reviewed synchronized data streams in silence. They had what they needed. There was no alarm, no klaxon cut across the wind, no general announcement echoed through passageways. The flight deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford continued its measured rhythm until a routine safety hold was called over the net. The phrasing was procedural, unremarkable. Aircraft at the catapult remained secured. Deck crew froze in place according to drilled protocol, hands resting on equipment, eyes tracking supervisors for further instruction. Master Chief Jeffrey Blackwood stood near the edge of the marked evolution lane, posture straight, gaze forward. His hands were clasped behind his back, fingers interlaced. The Atlantic wind pressed his uniform flat against his frame. From the starboard access point, a master at-arms walked with steady pace, accompanied by an NCIS special agent in service attire. Their steps were synchronized but unhurried. No one parted dramatically to clear a path. Personnel simply shifted as required, awareness passing through the deck like a current beneath the surface. Morgan observed from the island station, headset resting against her collarbone. Her screen displayed routine traffic metrics, unchanged. Her breathing remained even, though her thumb pressed once into the edge of her tablet hard enough to pale the knuckle before releasing. The master-at-arms stopped at regulation distance from Blackwood. The NCIS agent stood half a step behind, a folder secured beneath his arm. Master Chief Blackwood, the master-at-arms said, voice level, audible only within the immediate perimeter. You are being relieved pending investigation. Words carried formal weight, not accusation, not conviction. Administrative relief. Blackwood's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. A small muscle ticked near his left eye before settling. He did not step back. He did not look around for confirmation. Understood, he replied. No weapons were drawn. No hands reached for restraints. The NCIS agent opened the folder with deliberate care, exposing documentation already signed under proper authority. Blackwood glanced at the heading once. His gaze lingered on the signature block for a fraction longer than necessary, then returned to neutral. Around them, the embarked Naval Special Warfare operators stood in silence. One shifted his stance, boots grinding softly against non-skid. Another's fingers curled briefly into a fist before flattening again along his thigh. No one spoke. No one advanced. The wind filled the absence of dialogue. Morgan's eyes tracked the exchange through magnified deck cameras and direct line of sight. Her throat moved once as she swallowed. She did not adjust her posture. She did not avert her gaze. Blackwood released his hands from behind his back. His arms fell naturally at his sides. He turned his head slowly, scanning the deck, once not in search of escape routes, but in acknowledgement of final perspective. His eyes found Morgan. There was no flare of anger there, no accusation. The lines around his mouth deepened slightly, as if bracing against an internal calculation long deferred. Recognition settled across his expression, measured, almost clinical. He inclined his head a fraction. Morgan held the look without blinking. The pulse at the base of her neck was visible for a brief second before the wind shifted her collar. The master at arms gestured subtly toward the access ladder leading below deck. Blackwood stepped forward without prompting. His stride remained steady, shoulders squared. The NCIS agent followed at measured distance. The serpent and sinking ship tattoo remained concealed beneath uniform fabric as he descended from the flight deck. Behind him, operations did not erupt into chaos. The safety hold concluded. Aircraft crews resumed motion with disciplined efficiency. Checklists continued from the exact line where they had paused. Morgan lowered her gaze to her display and resumed monitoring encrypted traffic flow. Her hands moved with precise control across the keyboard. On the horizon, the Atlantic stretched gray and unbroken. The carrier maintained course, propulsion steady beneath steel decks. The evolution had been executed without spectacle. The interrogation room was windowless, acoustically insulated, climate-controlled to regulation standard. Master Chief Jeffrey Blackwood sat upright at the metal table, wrists resting flat against the surface. No restraints, no visible pressure applied. The air carried the sterile neutrality of institutional process. Across from him, the NCIS special agent opened a secured case file. The folder's edges were worn from handling, classification tabs marked with controlled distribution stamps. He arranged the documents with precise alignment, fingertips smoothing each page before speaking. "This is a formal investigative interview," he stated evenly. "You are not under physical duress. You are obligated to answer questions consistent with your clearance and the Uniform Code of Military Justice." Blackwood's gaze remained forward. His breathing was steady, diaphragm controlled. A faint contraction pulsed near his temple, then stilled. The first document slid across the table. Banking disclosures from the Cayman Islands. Transaction logs structured through layered intermediaries, dates spanning years. Incremental transfers that avoided automatic reporting thresholds. Blackwood's eyes moved line by line. He did not reach for the paper. Another document followed. Meeting records in Dubai. Flight manifests. Hospitality receipts coded under third-party vendors. Surveillance stills printed in grayscale. His jaw flexed once, molars setting before easing apart. The special agent's voice did not rise. He read ledger entries aloud with clinical cadence. Corporate registration filings surfaced next an offshore consultancy with no operational footprint beyond a postal address and a rotating board of proxies. Defense-adjacent funds had entered the entity through subcontract channels, masked as strategic advisory compensation. Blackwood's fingers curled slightly against the steel surface, knuckles blanching before color returned. He exhaled through his nose, slow and measured. "Janet Collins," the agent continued, placing a final document forward. The name remained suspended in the air between them. The original report had been filed 2 decades earlier. Internal counterintelligence had flagged anomalies in procurement oversight and foreign contact patterns. Monitoring authorization had followed quiet, compartmentalized. Signals, intercepts, archived. financial tracking algorithms refined. At the time, there had been no prosecutable threshold. Suspicion had not equaled charge. The file had remained open, dormant but active in designation, until the current convergence of evidence. The agent folded his hands atop the dossier. The surveillance was continuous. Blackwood's eyes shifted for the first time, not to the documents, but to the blank wall beyond the agent's shoulder. The muscle beneath his left eye flickered once more. His lips pressed thin, then relaxed. "You were not cleared," the agent said. "You were assessed." Silence settled without hostility. In the corridor outside, Morgan stood with arms crossed, back straight against the bulkhead. The fluorescent lighting flattened color from her features. A pulse beat visibly at the base of her throat. She stared at the closed door, unblinking. Inside, Blackwood lowered his gaze to the final page. The evidentiary matrix had aligned: offshore accounts, foreign meetings, Shell consultancy, procurement flow. Correlation had matured into admissible proof. He drew a controlled breath. His shoulders remained squared. He had not been shielded by loyalty or rank. The absence of intervention had not been oversight. It had been patience, watched, measured, recorded. The special agent closed the file with deliberate calm. The sound of paper meeting paper was soft, final. Blackwood lifted his eyes once more, composure intact, expression stripped of pretense. Whatever calculation had once operated behind it now carried the weight of accumulated documentation. Beyond the reinforced door, the ship continued its operational tempo. Engines maintained propulsion. Watch rotations proceeded on schedule. Systems logged data without pause. Inside the room, the record was complete. 1 week later, the USS Gerald R. Ford maintained operational tempo without deviation. Launch cycles resumed on schedule. Catapult crews moved with rehearsed precision, yellow shirts signaling with crisp, economical gestures. Arresting gear engines absorbed returning aircraft with measured force, steel cables vibrating before settling back into readiness. There had been no press release, no controlled media statement. Administrative actions remained contained within formal channels. The Navy did not externalize internal compromise. It documented, adjudicated, and corrected. On the flight deck, the wind carried the smell of jet exhaust and salt. Sailors conducted post-flight inspections beneath the fading light, flashlights tracing fuselage seams and hydraulic lines. Logbooks were updated in tight, disciplined handwriting. Nothing in their movements suggested disruption. Procedure was intact. Morgan stood alone at the outer rail as the sun lowered toward the Atlantic horizon. The orange band of light reflected across the water in fractured lines. Her hands rested lightly on the cold steel. Her shoulders were squared, posture aligned by habit rather than display. The breeze shifted a loose strand of hair against her cheek. She did not brush it away. Below, the wake of the carrier stretched in a white, foaming corridor. The ship cut forward with nuclear-driven constancy, indifferent to individual consequence. Her phone vibrated once in her pocket. She withdrew it without haste. The screen illuminated her face in pale light. A single message. From Janet. Debt settled. Now serve for yourself. Morgan read it once. The muscles along her jaw tightened subtly, then eased. Her thumb hovered over the screen before locking it dark. No reply was drafted. For a moment, her breathing stalled at the top of an inhale. She released it slowly, controlled, diaphragm steady. The sounds of the deck continued behind her, boots against non-skid. The distant whine of auxiliary power units, a bosun's call echoing faintly from the island. Routine layered over routine, forming the rhythm of sustained deployment. Morgan shifted her weight and straightened from the rail. The fabric of her sleeve rode slightly upward as she adjusted her stance, exposing her forearm to the cooling air. Bare skin, no serpent, no sinking hull. No mark burned into flesh as declaration or warning. Her gaze settled on the unmarked surface. The pulse beneath the skin was faint but visible, a steady cadence against the fading light. She flexed her fingers once, tendons tightening beneath the surface before relaxing again. Integrity required no insignia. Behind her eyes, calculations continued. Threat assessments, procedural safeguards, personnel evaluations. None of it surfaced in expression. Her face remained composed, features neutral, controlled within the boundaries of command presence. The sky darkened incrementally. Navigation lights activated along the deck perimeter, casting disciplined points of red and green into the encroaching blue. Watch rotations would commence within the hour. Reports would be filed. Equipment inventories verified. Morgan slipped the phone back into her pocket. Her hand lingered there briefly, pressing the fabric flat against her thigh before falling away. She turned from the rail and walked back toward the island structure, steps measured, neither hurried nor hesitant. Sailors passed her and rendered brief nods of acknowledgement. She returned them with minimal movement, authority conveyed without emphasis. The carrier advanced through open water, hull steady, course unwavering. No symbol marked her skin. None was necessary. The summons arrived through official tasking channels, encrypted and authenticated. Morgan read it once at her workstation, eyes moving across the routing line without pause. Her expression did not shift. She secured her terminal, logged out under proper protocol, and proceeded through the passageways toward the Information Warfare Commander's office. Fluorescent lighting hummed overhead. Her boots struck the deck in measured cadence, heel to toe, controlled. A petty officer stepped aside to clear the narrow corridor. She acknowledged the movement with a slight inclination of her head, nothing more. Outside the office, she adjusted the lay of her uniform blouse with a brief downward tug. The fabric settled flat across her shoulders. She knocked once. Enter. The Information Warfare Commander stood behind a desk arranged with deliberate precision. No excess paperwork, no personal artifacts visible. A classified folder rested centered before him. He did not gesture for her to sit. "Petty Officer Collins," he began, voice level, "you will attend advanced cyber exploitation training under Fleet Cyber Command orders." He rotated the folder toward her. The heading bore the insignia of United States Fleet Cyber Command. Reporting instructions, timelines, non-disclosure reinforcement, and compartmentalized clearance adjustments were outlined in concise administrative language. Morgan's eyes tracked each line. Her breathing remained steady, though her fingers tightened fractionally along the folder's edge. Tendons lifting beneath the skin before easing. "This assignment carries expanded authority," the commander continued. "You will operate under direct tasking. Performance standards will be uncompromising." "Yes, sir." Her response was immediate. No inflection beyond regulation respect. "There will be no public recognition attached to this billet," he added. "Your evaluations will reflect performance. Nothing more." A muscle along her jaw engaged briefly, then released. "Understood, sir." He studied her for a moment, assessing without visible sentiment. Then he gave a single nod, signaling dismissal. Morgan turned sharply on her heel and exited the office. The hatch closed behind her with a muted metallic seal. In the corridor, a cluster of junior sailors stood gathered near a bulkhead-mounted console. Their voices were low, fragmented. One scrolled rapidly through a diagnostic screen, lips pressed thin. Another rubbed at the back of his neck, fingers lingering there as if steadying himself. They looked up as Morgan approached. Uncertainty flickered across their faces' creased brows. Shoulders drawn slightly inward, breaths held half a second too long. The weight of systems they barely understood rested in their hands. Morgan slowed but did not stop. She met their eyes one by one. No speech, no instruction delivered in passing. She gave a single nod, not reassurance, not praise. A recognition of shared burden. The sailors straightened almost imperceptibly. The one at the console exhaled and resumed typing, keystrokes more deliberate. Another lowered his hand from his neck and squared his shoulders. Morgan continued down the passageway toward her compartment to prepare for transfer. Her reflection moved alongside her in the narrow strip of polished metal lining the bulkheads, steady, controlled, contained. Beyond the steel hull of the USS Gerald R. Ford, the ocean extended without boundary. Data streams flowed invisibly across satellites and fiber lines, carrying threats masked as routine traffic. Exploitation vectors formed and dissolved in milliseconds. Attribution required patience. Response required precision. The war most people never see unfolded in packets and code, in silent authorizations and sealed directives. Morgan reached her berthing compartment and paused at the threshold for a fraction of a second. Her hand tightened once around the strap of her sea bag before relaxing. There would be no ceremony marking her departure. No formation assembled in her honor. Orders were executed, not celebrated. She stepped inside and began to pack with methodical efficiency. The quiet professionals did not announce their victories. If you wish to continue following this story, subscribe to the channel.